pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you for coming. Nice to see a room full tonight for the board meeting. We will move along with the agenda as it's printed, roll call. And at this time, I would ask for a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Motion by Bob Woods, second by Bob Jensen. Any discussion? All in favor of that motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Mustang Spirit Recognition. Call on Mr.
I can start.
Paul. Thank you,
Lois
Randy.
and Nikki, if you stand up.
We're coming through this way.
Find an open spot.
Our Mustang Spirit goes to Lois Pick and Nikki Dahlquist for always going above and beyond. Typical, Lois came to me and said, we need new cones, and she found some, and she had them shipped to Mora. And Nikki said, I said, let's label them Mora Elementary, and Nikki said, well, can I use my Cricut and put no parking Mora Elementary on them? Is that okay? That's great. So just the norm for those two. They're always there early, helping keep our kids safe. So always going above and beyond, and we really appreciate everything that you do for Mora Elementary. So, thank you.
Do we all? Thank you all.
Thank you. We'll give them our chairs.
Yeah. Thanks, ladies.
Yes,
Thank you
you
guys
bet.
very
Thank you,
much.
guys.
Thank you.
Is it for you, Randy?
Yeah.
How about Mr. Nelson?
All right. So, this is going to be hard from over here, Kelly, but I have learned there's three kinds of people in the world. There's people that when they see there's a problem, they just complain about it. There's people when they see there's a problem, they don't complain, but they just ignore it. And then there's people when they see there's a problem, they figure out a way to fix it. And Kelly Christensen is someone who sees a problem and tries to fix it. We have a huge shortage of substitute teachers and paraprofessionals. It's not just in Mora, it's all over the state. If you hear principals, every admin meeting, we're complaining to Mr. Schultz about what are we gonna do? We have this sub shortage. We can't find enough teachers, we can't find enough paras. Teachers are giving up their prep hour. See a lot of teachers in the crowd. They're not able to prepare like they'd like to because our secretary is calling them and begging them to please sub today. That's a daily occurrence. Kelly heard about our problem and she took action. She sought out some people in the community that are qualified to be subs. She learned what some of their fears were, and she found out that some of them, they haven't been in the school in a long time, and it makes them a little bit nervous. So she talked to the principals, we invited them in and had them shadow some of our staff. And just in the last, literally in 2 weeks, we had 3 new subs at Mora High School that are subbing every day. And I really, really appreciate that. I know the other principals agree. I know the teachers agree. Thank you, Kelly, for being a problem solver.
Thank you, Kelly. Thank you, Mr. Nelson. Is there anybody else that would like to give a Mustang Spirit recognition or award at this time? All right, seeing none, we will move on then to item number 3, School Board Recognition Week. Well, that's past. Today's the 27th. It was February 17th through 21st. Proclamation and presentation of certificates.
But it's a perfect lead-in with the Mustang Spirit and our school board. So I'd like to read this proclamation and then present each of our school board members with a certificate of appreciation from the school district, the students, and our staff. So, whereas the mission of public schools is preparing self-directed and resourceful learners able to thrive in a changing global community, and whereas you, our local school board members, are committed to children and believe that all children can be successful learners by working with parents, education professionals, and other community members to create the educational vision we want for our students. And whereas you are responsible for ensuring the structure that provides a solid foundation for our school system by assuring the educational program is accountable to the community. And whereas you are strong advocates for public education and responsible for communicating the needs of the Mora School District to the public and the public's expectations to the district. Therefore, I, Craig Schultz, as Superintendent of Mora Public Schools, do hereby declare appreciation to the members of the Mora School Board on behalf of the entire staff, district residents, and our students. And just to point out, Karen Kirshner has been the board chair and has served the school district for the past 19 years. Ethan Elbagem is the board vice chair and treasurer. He's been serving the board for 12 years. Scott Moll, board clerk, has been with the district on the school board for 8 years. Tammy Bohachik as a director, 6 years. Robert Jensen as a director, 6 years of service. And Robert Woods, director, 6 years of service. So I'd like to present you with these certificates, and I think a round of applause would be appropriate. Tammy. Woods. And I forgot this. Again, thank you to the school board on behalf of the students, staff, and the community at large for the work that you do on behalf of our students.
You're welcome. I speak for the entire board when I say it's our pleasure, it's our passion, and we do it for the kids, the community, and the staff, and everybody that's involved with Mora Public Schools. So, thank you. All right, we'll move on to presentation on the pending scholarship.
So before I begin with the Spain 2021 plans, I wanted to compare it a little bit to the recent trip we took to Ecuador last summer. So the Ecuador trip was 46 total people, 39 students and parents. I expect the Spain trip will be smaller in number. That was a little big for me, I found. A little bit outside my comfort zone. It was fine, but I'm looking forward to a smaller group so we can have a little bit more just ease of movement through places. So I'm thinking perhaps around 20 might be our number. So maybe about half what we had for Ecuador. So when we were in Ecuador, we did a Quito tour. So part of the Spain trip will be a Madrid tour. The Quito tour was great. We were on a double-decker bus. I think we will try to find that for Madrid as well. So just kind of taking some direction from some of the previous trips, what you learn, and try to make things better. So we also went to the Andes. Of course, there are no Andes in Spain, but we do have a lot of historic sites in Spain. So we'll be seeing a lot of history versus seeing a lot of nature. So that'll be a little different. School and cultural visits. The school visit we still plan to do, and we've done the school visit in the past in Spain. So when we were in Ecuador, we visited a girls' school, and the kids had a really good day there. We're able to speak the language and made a lot of connections to the kids there. So the kids in Spain that go to a public school, and it's a co-ed public school, they correspond with my Spanish 3 students. So we already have a relationship with them. So that wasn't the case with these students in the school in Ecuador, but it still turned out super cool. So we enjoyed that. Cultural visits. When we were in Ecuador, we were able to visit a museum, and we actually got some dance lessons. We got to hear some different instruments. We'll be going to a lot of museums. I don't expect we'll necessarily be playing instruments, but we plan to go to a flamenco performance, and perhaps they will give us some instruction. Not sure, but that's something that the students will learn about as well. So some correlations between the two trips I think we can find. So when we went to Ecuador, we also went to the Galapagos. That was by far the hardest part of the trip to plan. It's tricky to plan a trip to the Galapagos for an individual, but for a group it was a little trickier. But I think it was super worthwhile. Abby went with us. What do you think? Was the Galapagos one of your favorites?
Oh, for sure, yeah.
So that was one of the things that I'm changing about the Spain trip is we are going to go to the, if you approve, we're going to be going to the Canary Islands, which are off the coast of Africa. So something different, you know, ecologically, seeing a different landscape, culturally different as well, because it's a Spanish territory that wasn't originally part of Spain, and then it was kind of adopted by Spain during the imperial era. And so I think that'll be interesting to see and just kind of compare that culture to mainland Spain culture. And we've been learning some things about those islands in class. So I want to try to prepare students a little bit more for the trip before they go, so they know what they're seeing. And so that's kind of the comparison to the Spain trip. So it's a lot cheaper to get to the Canary Islands, and there are less restrictions. So I think that will be a good thing. But the Galapagos, that was pretty phenomenal. So during our trip, we did surfing and ziplining. We will be doing those things during the Spain trip as well. There is good surfing in the Canary Islands and good surf schools. And the ziplining, I don't think we can compare the Ecuadorian ziplining to what we're going to do in Spain. The zip line has only one zip, one line, one way. But it's one of those rare zip lines where you are zip lining and the backdrop is, you know, a 15th century church, just really, really old building. So super historic. So it's just zip lining across the Tahoe River, which kind of goes around Toledo. So very cool, a one zip, but if you haven't been zip lining, at least you get the cool experience. But definitely not quite like the 15 zips in Ecuador. So nature and authentic meals. We're going to have a lot of nature in the Canary Islands. So that's, we really haven't done a huge nature focus on our Spain trip before. But one of the things we're going to focus on in the Canary Islands is some astronomy, because it's one of the best places to see the stars on the planet. So hoping to prepare the students, and we're going to do maybe a night tour where we can look through the telescope and see the different constellations and have the kids learn about, the stories of the constellations in Spanish. So that's kind of my plan for that. Authentic meals, we will definitely be having those in Spain, but they're going to look a little different from the meals we've had in Ecuador. But I mean, they're both great. So I like food of every country. So hopefully the students will too. And I think that was it. So basically you have the itinerary in front of you. I did my best to estimate cost, and I like to estimate high. The Ecuador trip was right on budget. Usually the Spain trip, I would charge more, and then the kids will get money back. So the last time we did the trip to Spain, it was $2,400, and they got $120 back per person. So it wound up being like $22.80. So this is considerably more, but there are some bigger question marks because we haven't done the trip to the Canary Islands before. So if the refund is bigger, that's not a problem. But the Canary Islands do make it a little bit more expensive, but I feel like it's adding something to the trip that's a little different and kind of unique. So I think the kids would enjoy that. I did put a little note about how, our goal is to have the students speaking Spanish and interacting with native Spanish speakers. We like to do the school activities and have opportunities for our kids to interact and have authentic situations, like, ordering in a restaurant or hanging out with kids their age. So that's one of our priorities. If we do have a small group, we might be able to get homestays in the Canary Islands, which would be, my goal. But again, that will depend on the size of the group too. So there are still a few things up in the air. So kind of put a little higher price tag on it right now, but that price could go down, and it will depend on airfare, which I will not know until August. So you can only reserve a certain amount of days out. So any questions?
So if you're planning to take a smaller group, have you already put it out there to the
kids that they better be thinking about it, or it will be risk on for
Well-
soon? How do you think it will all shake out?
I don't expect I will have more than 20 that want to go.
Okay.
The travel club does a bunch of different trips, and the travel club is going to Portugal that year, which is like right next to Spain. So I know that there are kids that have already signed up for the Portugal trip, so they're not gonna go on the Spain trip. And so I'm just gauging on interest, and I've showed the kids, okay, well, here's what we're thinking about doing, what is your input on it, so that they can give me some ideas, and they're like, oh yeah, we'd like to go to the Canary Islands. And if they had their preference, we would arrive in Iceland and do some Iceland tours. So, I mean, I did, that is a possibility still. It's a little harder to get from the Canary Islands to Iceland, and how I've planned our trip is to minimize flights, so we don't have extra expenses and extra time flying. But that is one of the things the kids would really like to do is Iceland, which is what we did last time on our Spain trip. So that is a possibility. And again, it's what costs less to get into Europe. Sometimes it costs less to fly into Dublin. Sometimes it'll cost less to fly into Iceland. But you also have to figure we're going to fly from there to Madrid and from the Canaries to wherever that is. So the trip from the Canaries to Iceland is the tricky part. But Dublin, that's fine. There are flights, really cheap flights from the Canaries to Dublin. So it will all depend how it all shakes out and how, when I give the airlines a number and they come back with bids, that's kind of that's when I decide, or that's when I plan to decide. So whatever is the cheapest and the best route, without like huge layovers, is probably what we'll do.
Well, thank you. Any questions? Okay. Feel fairly confident because you're kind of a veteran in this.
Yeah, I've done
And,
a few trips to
done-
Spain is kind of that's a place I'm very comfortable with.
Yeah.
So.
And the tour company or the group you use to travel with, I'm sure you're comfortable
Well,
with that?
I plan the trip myself, and that's why there are these things up in the air.
So you don't use any outside?
And that's why the price is what it is. That's how the kids could go to the Galapagos and Ecuador for 2 weeks for under, for $2,800. Because you probably can't find a trip yourself for that amount.
Well, thank
So
you
that's,
for going above and beyond, but providing a really great opportunity.
Yeah, I enjoy it, and I think the kids will definitely enjoy this trip too. And I do have a really good colleague, Tracy, as you saw, Tracy Johnson from Hinkley, that would be joining us like she did in Ecuador. She was she came on this previous Spain trip too. So we were kind of travel buddies, and it always really works out well together. And then you've got somebody else who speaks Spanish and shares your same language goals. So she's also a veteran of traveling, so it's very comforting to have two people who have done it before. That makes a lot easier trip.
Yes, if somebody would.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion to approve the proposed Spain trip for June of 2021. And is there any further discussion? If not, all in favor of that motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Another awesome opportunity for students.
Okay, call on Mrs. Hart.
I'm coming out.
On her way down. Introduction to a new physical education standards and we'll hear this presentation.
Okay, so there are new physical education standards that came out in 2018, which seems like a couple years ago, but it takes quite a while for standards to go through the process of being implemented in schools. Like it can take up to 4 or 5 years. That's why it says 2018. And so we're going to take a look at the history, the new standards, and then how it kind of changes the focus, and maybe we need to make a few tweaks to how we do things in the high school to reflect that. So the history of PE standards Is 2003 PE standards were eliminated. We had them, and then they eliminated them, and it became an elective in high school. Well, quickly within a year, the state realized that that was a big mistake because it just got chaotic surrounding PE. So then they went back to requiring PE, a certain age range, kindergarten through 8th grade, at least once in high school. But they really didn't put any timelines, they didn't put any standards in place, and they didn't say how many credits. So it still was kind of a little bit of chaos because everything was locally designed. In 2010, they realized that there was no commonality in PE education, physical education. So they established PE standards. They adopted the national standards. So we adopted the 2004 national standards, but they didn't have benchmarks that were aligned to grades. So every local district got to make their own benchmarks for the standards. Their assessments got to decide whether there were credits, whether it was required. But they did say that all students in kindergarten through 8th grade had to take PE, and high school had to receive it once, although once was up for whatever you interpreted that to be. 2014 legislated added PE as a required subject, so it became a little more important. And then 2015 ESSA came out and said, well, PE is now one of the core subjects. They added it to a core subject. And then Minnesota, responding to that, came out with a new set of Minnesota standards, 2018. But this time, they had standards, they came out with all the benchmarks and all the focus areas, so it's all very detailed now. And districts are now required to come up with assessments that fit all those standards and benchmarks. And now districts have to phase all of this in this year and the next year. Local, you still get to decide on the timeline of covering those benchmarks, and then the credit requirements. You still get to decide how many credits are required in high school, so each district can have their own requirements. However, this little asterisk down here, this year it's going to legislation, or it probably will, that now they're going to, the governor has it in his bill, that it's going to be 1 credit of high school that's going to be required, so they're changing that. So the timeline is just to show that it's kind of evolved over time. We know that physical education has become more important, health in schools, and so the progression of the standards and what's required in school is also changing. So what have we done? The PE content group and myself, we attended workshops last year and this year. The second one was quite good. Ashley went with me to that one. She was there. We did summer curriculum writing last year. We spent a chunk of money on PE teachers and looking at all those standards and mapping them out and coming up with scope and sequence, meaning how it moves kindergarten through 12th grade. And then we've spent some teacher workshop days working on developing that common understanding, kindergarten through 12th grade of what it looks like in our district, and then and vertically aligning all of that. All subject areas and all grade levels, we are using what we call rainbow grids, and I bet you can't see why we call them rainbow grids, but we're coming up with a common platform, if you will, for every single subject content area and in each grade. This is an example of PE has already started. This is a kindergarten grid that will be published here pretty soon, and this is a 7th grade grid. It just kind of gives you a snapshot of they've been working really hard on getting all of this stuff organized, and then in the platform that we're going to be expecting of all the teachers. So the goal of the standards is to develop physical, literate individuals who have the knowledge, skills, and confidence to enjoy lifetime healthful physical activity. And this is the goal of the new 2018 standards. They're organized into an anchor standard. There are 5 standards that go throughout kindergarten through 12th grade, the same exact 5 standards. And then focus areas change a bit. They're kind of similar, but they change as you move through the grades. But the benchmarks are all, and you can see how many there are for each band here. And high school kind of is the focus of this presentation. You can see how many benchmarks there are. And those are age and grade appropriate benchmarks, so those will change when you move through the standards. The next 6 slides, there's a lot of writing, and mostly this, I put this in here for you guys. Later, if you want to look through and see what the standards are and the different focus areas and the benchmarks, you can go through all those. But that's, we put through those. There you go. And this is the 9th through 12th, so you'll see that it has the same 5 standards as the earlier grades. It has the focus areas, which are kind of similar. They change a bit. Stress management is in here, which I kind of liked. And then all the benchmarks that are corresponding to all those focus areas and standards. And this is all online too. If you ever go to MDE, you can find the complete list of standards if you really wanted to know them. Go ahead. So, why am I telling you about this? There's been a big shift, a mindset, if you will, on how important physical education is in schools, what it does for students, and how we are to think about it as a core subject, assessing it, and all these different things. And so it's no different than language arts, math, science, any of those. It's the same. And so in high school right now, we have 25 required credits, 4 language arts, and you can see they're all itemized here. The state has requirements that go along it. I put those in the parentheses. We have 1 credit of PE required at the high school, although as we know, the state right now doesn't tell us we have to do that, but that's what, we have to take 1 whatever in high school. We've decided it's 1 credit. Wording from the Mora High School Student Handbook says we require physical education classes, or required classes are not considered in GPA totals. So they take their required physical education class, they are graded in that class currently, and then that grade from PE doesn't get accounted in their overall GPA. Now, back, I think this changed about 12 years ago or something like that, that was acceptable, and that I talked to MDE about that, and she said, oh yeah, back a dozen years ago or so, that was more common, but it has changed and evolved as we've moved along, just like the standards have. And right now in the student handbook, it says move-in students will use the nearest class rank to their GPA until they have established their own. Well, all of the incoming high school students, those PE grades are in their GPA, so, and ours aren't, so it's kind of a misalignment there between what's being practiced and what we are currently doing. This is all the neighboring districts. I called them all and found out what they did, or read their handbook. And so you can see the required courses, how many they require. It's usually 1 or 1.5. And then do they count PE grades in the overall GPA? So we are the only one that does not. So any students from Malacca, Brown, Ogilvie, Pine City, Isle that are coming in and out of our districts, there's a misalignment there. So we just, it would be nice to fix that. Oh, go ahead. So why include the PE grades in the GPA? Accountability. The state has changed the importance of physical education and how they think about it, and the assessment piece and what we have to do. And now with the new legislation this year, it might change even a little bit more to make it more important. Equity. Students struggling in other subjects, students who might not get those A's in language arts, or they're not strong in math, maybe they shine in PE, they get an A, but we're not giving them value for that. Kinesthetic learners, we know that some kids, that's their go-to spot. They're movers and groovers, and that's where they learn best. To be competitive with our neighboring districts, and then also scholarships, college entrance. Our GPA isn't the same as a lot of other schools because those PE grades aren't in there. So there's kind of a mismatch there. And then career pathways. A love of PE might lead to a career pathway. Look at Mr. Nelson, there's Chris, there's Chip, there's Ashley. They're all PE teachers. There's a lot of other, I was looking up careers that are related to people who like kinesthetic learning, and even surgeons were listed because they're in control of their body, and I thought that was interesting. Anyway, so what is the recommendation? The recommendation is to include all the high school physical education class grades in the overall high school GPA for the students beginning with the class of 2024. So that would be next fall for incoming ninth graders. Thank you.
Sure. Really good information. It's been a while since we've had a presentation on science curriculum at all. And your color coding is really helpful. That is so user friendly.
You know I like color. Do you have any questions at all?
Any questions for Brenda tonight? We will take this. We will be bringing it back.
Okay.
And discuss it further. So thank you,
Thank you.
Brenda. All right, at this time we will move to our first open forum, and I will call on Mr. Watron.
Hi.
Hi.
Everyone.
Come on up, Eric. Yeah, wherever you're comfortable. I guess.
I'll just stand here.
You
You
probably
want me to
can't
go up
move.
front or-
You're fine.
You're fine.
You're fine.
Hi, for those who don't know me, I'm Eric Watron. I have 5 children at home still, 4 of which attend Mora. My oldest is in 10th grade, my youngest is a 3-year-old. So I'm here to talk to the board about their lice policy. Recently, it's become more of a problem. My youngest daughter is 4, and she is autistic, and she's in preschool, in a 4-year-old preschool. She has come down with head lice 3 times this year, and every time that she gets lice, it is extremely traumatic. She has a lot of sensory issues, and there's other kids in this district that are going through the same problem, and it's over and over and over again that they're having this issue. And when I talk to the school nurse, I get the line that it's not a problem. Third world countries deal with it all the time. I'm sorry, we are not a third world country, we are a first world nation. And we have the ability to deal with the situation when it comes up. I was also told that our policy here is the same as it is across the nation. Again, I'm sorry, but we are responsible for the students here, not the students in Washington, D.C., not the students in Portland, Oregon, or wherever else. It is our responsibility here to take care of our children here, to watch out for their health and their well-being and their mental health. And a blanket policy, I don't believe is acceptable for the entire student body. It maybe works really well for older students, that when you can tell them and they understand to stay away from, and keep their heads to themselves and not be giving hugs to everybody that they see, and to not grab the nearest hat and try to put it on when they're in a hurry to get out to the playground. With the young students, that doesn't happen. It goes in one ear and out the other, especially with little kids, and more so in preschool than others. But I feel that there's got to be something that we can do to get ahead of the ball game when it comes to something like this. For those of you that don't know, I am a master barber. I understand head lice, and I get the deal that they don't carry disease and that they don't bite you. The itch that you get is from the excrement, the serum that they excrete. I understand all of these things. Also, I do know that because of that, you are more likely to get it again because they are attracted to that, and that residue stays on your head. There's things that we can do to prevent the spread. We have a facility in this area over just south of Malacca called Slug-Bug. They have been in touch with the district here through the nurse. That's as far as she said she can go, and she's hit a brick wall. They do a referral program that allows parents to receive a discount for services, which also builds an account of revenue for the district for families that don't have the funds to address the situation that needs to be taken care of. But by ignoring it in the classrooms, we're allowing it to be spread to more children and more children. When I had my daughter over there, she informed me that she has treated 5 other preschoolers besides my daughter in the last week. As I said, for my daughter personally to go through this again for the 3rd time this year was unacceptable for me. I have pulled my daughter from preschool, and that was heartbreaking. She loves going to school, but watching her go through 2 hours of screaming torture to get the bugs out of her hair was a lot harder. I would really appreciate it if there's something that can be done to look into this policy and find ways that we can do things better. Find ways that we can change so that it gets stopped before it becomes a problem. And I don't know exactly what that would all entail for the district to implement, but I feel that something needs to be done. For not just for my child, but for all the children that have to go through this. It's not fun. And over-the-counter medications don't work anymore. The majority of head lice have become resistant to all the medications that you can buy in the store. Most of the time, manual removal is the only way to get rid of them. So people still think that the treatments work because they do them 2-3 times, and what they've actually done is they've actually manually removed all of the lice. It only takes one to spread eggs and turn into a problem. So, you know, if there's some way that we can go about changing policy, even for the younger grades that have the hard time keeping to themselves and understanding that they can't share hats and understanding that they can't give hugs and things to that aspect, I think that would be a benefit to the district and to the children that we are responsible for.
Thank you for bringing it to our attention. Appreciate it, Eric. And we will look into it further.
If you are interested in talking with the lady over there and learning about the program that they offer all the districts, and there's several that do participate in it, she said she is more than willing to talk to anybody that would be interested.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, next I will call on Mr. Ken Stumpf.
I'll abstain till the second open forum.
Okay. Is there anybody else that would like to address the board at this time? These were the only requests that I had, so. Okay. We'll move on then to the consent agenda. Any requests to remove any items? And I'm thinking that we will pull item D under, item D, which is all of the minutes from previous meetings in the last month. We will have them in our packet at this time, so they can be approved another time if they are ready. So we'll remove all of item 8D. And then, is there anything else that anybody would like pull from the consent agenda? Not, I'd entertain a motion to approve.
Second.
Motion by Ethan, second by Scott. Any further discussion? We do have 4 retirements I'd like to acknowledge tonight, and it was roughly 120 years of service among those 4, an average of 30 years, and that is appreciated, and I want to recognize these people Tricia Eustace, Elaine Johnson, Kay Monson, and Joan Hayweisen as teachers who have given, among them, almost 120 years of service to the Mora School District. So, thank you. We wish them well in their retirement. And also, we will acknowledge and accept the gifts and donations that are part of the report for January, or the consent agenda tonight. Northern Technology Initiative, a $500 grant for labor market information session here at the high school. First Citizens Bank, $4,000 grant for CAD software at the high school. Quick Trip, $200 to MES, Student Incentive Fund, I guess, School of Excellence donation. Neighborhood National Bank, also School of Excellence donation in the amount of $1,610. First Citizens Bank, $500. I've read them before, but that was not the School of Excellence. First Citizens Bank, $500, School of Excellence. And the Jelly Family, $500, Sue Jelly Scholarship Fund. So thank you to those businesses and individuals for their donations as well. And is there anything else to note or any discussion on that motion? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. And that motion passes unanimously. All right, we are to item 10. Consider approval of the high school repair and renovate Plan B as recommended by the Buildings and Grounds Committee. As we know, we have been considering the possibility of a renovation plan here at the high school. Buildings and Grounds Committee has been working overtime to meet and to dive into what that would entail. Also, let me be clear, we're fully aware that there is a bond issue election coming up May 12th for building facilities up at the Trailview site to replace this building. That's not going unnoticed, but we're dealing with two things here in tandem, and in no way is the board at this time advocating a repair plan, but just because of the circumstances of the past years now, we feel like we have the responsibility to move ahead and prepare for some what ifs. So, and the what if at this time would be if there's another referendum that does not pass, the one scheduled for May 12th. And so with that, we have started down that path, and I'm going to turn it over to Jeff Schultz at this time, and he has a presentation on a proposal.
And with me in the room is, we also have Kevin who's assisted us in this process, as well as Ron Dirks, architect from Wold and Associates, is here with us and can help answer some questions on the technical side if need be, as well as Greg Crow from Ellers and Associates, who worked on the financial sides and the tax impact associated with this and the various options that you have in front of you. You should be able to answer those types of questions. And I just gotta give some kudos to Brad Kramer, because Brad, as a citizen in your community, volunteered a lot of hours to walk through the sites with Chip and other professional engineers that have gone through and looked at the mechanical system. So thanks for your volunteer services that you provided to the district. So, just real quick, you'll recall as a board that you adopted the priorities that were established by the building committee. The board formally adopted those on the 23rd. As far as in priority range, what do you see as the biggest priorities? Next. One of the things that the professionals as well as the building committee folks talked through is when you're trying to compare referendum and a new school, it'd be a 40-year type of solution looking long-term. How do you break Plan B up into not doing everything all at one time, but trying to take a bite of some of the needs here over time, whether it's every 5 years or every 10 years or every 4 years or every 3 years. And how might you go about that based on the priorities that you shared? So this is a 5-year example that was talked about and shared with the building committee. Again, you'll decide as a board what years you're doing, but you'll get a sense of the biggest priorities to begin with would be addressing some of the health and safety, security, and some of the bigger infrastructure needs associated with this building. The second phase would be to finish the additional health and safety needs that you weren't able to get to. New boilers, and looking at your boilers, you do have 5 years life expectancy of the boilers, so you wouldn't want to change those now. You've got them, you've been maintaining them well, but that's something about 5 years from now you really need to be looking at. And then additional infrastructure needs that obviously you can't get everything done with funding in one fell swoop. Maybe a 2020, 2030 type of time frame, you're starting to pick off of those health and safety related items are getting behind you. You're getting out from underneath them. Some additional infrastructure needs, some of the cosmetic types of things. But then you'd be able to start working on educational enhancements for your facilities and start to look at some educational things here. And maybe some technology investments for, those types of things. And in 2035, you'd start looking at more of those educational enhancements for your students and programming. But by this time, you're going to have a lot of major roofing needs. You've been doing it, take care of roofing, but over time, they're going to come due. And so you got to be thinking about that. So that's some of what we talked through with the building committee. Next slide. And I'd be remiss if I didn't talk through some of the challenge when you're remodeling a building, especially one that's pieced together, one that's different ages and vintages, one that majority of the buildings built back when they used asbestos commonly for insulation and those types of materials. You're trying to work and shoehorn ductwork into a building that wasn't originally designed for it. You have a lot of pipes and things that go into the walls or into the concrete floors. So there would be a lot to remodeling a building like this, but the firms that you're working with do a lot of remodeling of schools around the area. But you have to work around the students, means summer construction. If it's a significant project, you're probably looking at 2 summers construction. And then as you start to remodel a building, Vaughn brings up, there's code issues that come into play. A lot of times you're grandfathered in, but you need to understand as we start to remodel and upgrade a facility, and Brad Kramer and his firm certainly understand this and know this across the state. You start getting into fire marshal orders, you need to fully sprinkle the building. ADA codes now kick into play that you're grandfathered in. ASHRAE ventilation standards come into play and those types of things. And we talked through a lot of that. Then it's going to be, you have to have bigger contingency because you are going to uncover unforeseen things. Next. So our best way to try to help you through this was to look at the funding buckets of how would you be able to fund improvements in your facilities that you have authority for, right? So I'm not going to go into too detail. The building committee has really gone into detail on this, and certainly Greg Crow is a bigger expert by far on this than I am. But you have authority for abatement bonds, which would be parking lot type of projects. The board has authority to do that. There is a tax impact associated with that funding budget. You also have the ability to fund health and safety related items that be approved by MDE per their code, their standards, and you have authority to address those. And as you guys are aware of that, and a lot of school districts have done ventilation related projects across the state utilizing those statutes. There's another funding option that you have, and that's for adding educational space. You get $212 a pupil unit to add on to a school for educational purposes and educational space. And there is a direct impact to that. That is over a 15-year lease, typically. These others, you get to set the term of debt. LTFM, long-term facilities maintenance dollars, as you know as a board, those dollars has increased over the last 3 years. The state has given you more dollars for that, recognizing that they've underfunded schools. You get just over $600,000 a year in that funding bucket. You save some of that, get about $1 million saved up for your roofing or needs that would be coming towards the district. But there's no tax impact because you're already receiving that money, and you can borrow and bond against that money. We'll talk about that in a little bit. You also have general fund dollars, right? It's the dollars you use every day to pay for teachers and classroom supplies and the you know, the whole entire educational operation, in which you're free to spend those dollars for various things that, you know, at the same time, I just gotta tell you, your superintendent's made it very clear to our team, those are near and dear dollars to the district, and we don't wanna be tapping into those dollars. We want, we don't be letting teachers go to take care of boilers, you know? We want to make sure we're preserving our general fund. Okay, next. So the first funding bucket, and I'm gonna go in order across that chart, but the first one was abatement bonding funding. And what are the things, the health and safety related things we're trying to address with this funding? Your parent pickup drop off, your bus pickup drop off, kids coming across the busy road that you've been trying to address. How do you deal with that, right? Then Homeland Security, when they were here, said you don't have bollards in front of the school. Cars could just really drive right up and into your building. So there's some safety things that we're trying to address. Parking in and around your parking areas, and those types of things. Your total budget for that's about $2.4 million. You have the authority for that. Is it exactly designed yet? Well, no, none of these projects are exactly designed yet, right? But that's a budget. And all projects, they say, you know, go out to competitive bid, right? They all would be competitively bid across the industry. There's direct tax impact. Over 5 years, and I'm not advocating for 5, you guys are gonna set it, but just for context in my charts, 5 year, it would be an impact of about $42 annually on a $100,000 home. Okay. Next slide. Next is, you know, Vaughn and his staff took some time into giving some different options and looking at how might you accomplish some of this. Again, it's not a final design, but some of the things, looking at the parking lot over on the other side becoming staff overflow and bus park pickup and drop off. Having some bus pickup and drop off here and trying to get parents to go through a parent pickup and drop off instead of just dropping them at the front of the street, creating safety challenges. Moving your parking, your main parking, over to where your football practice field is. And again, is that exactly where it might go, or it might be other options, but trying to move away from kids running across the street, late for school, whatever, and avoiding that safety challenge. Put the parking on this side of the school. We need stormwater management. You know, there's different codes today with regards to impervious surfaces and so on. And so, what do you do with the existing? Well, if you leave it as a parking lot, people are gonna park there and go across that busy road. So, might be an opportunity for a location for stormwater management. And then restore and upgrade the parking lots that you have and as part of this. Is this perfect? Is it designed right? No. One of the challenges is you're landlocked, right? You also have a lake by you, right? You have a lot of impervious surface on a very small lot. This is taking away one of your biggest green spaces, right? Your football play field, right? What are you going to do different? What do you do with football? Phi-Ed. I just heard a presentation about Phi-Ed. You can't really have Phi-Ed on your football field, and your coach made it very clear to the building committee that by taking away my practice field, where am I practicing? And how are the kids driving up to Trailview to practice? Are they practicing on the football field, tearing it up? There's no easy answer to that, right? How about Phi-Ed? Where's Phi-Ed gonna be? Well, Phi-Ed could come over to this space, which is somewhat limited. Could explore a little bit of land over this way and maybe create a new field. You know, Bob mentioned that. That's not a bad idea, but a lower cost type of solution to help try to address that. So you'd have back some Phi-Ed space and those types of things. But is it completely done? No, but you get the sense of how maybe you might be able to use that $2.4 million and it's a budget, right? So. Questions on that, or questions for Ron on that?
Jeff, and also, what's ADA parking and accessibility near the entry?
Yeah, great point. Okay, keep going. So, fill in this funding bucket. There's our number. So we're going to build that as we go here. So the next one will be health and safety LTFM. Next. And you guys are very familiar with all the health and safety needs associated with the facility. And there's a lot of different challenges, and these are right from some of the IEA assessments, and there's been other professionals that have gone through and assessed some of the challenges with your building. One of the solutions, and your staff has spent a lot of time going through the buildings with professional engineers, as well as Brad and others. Look at the higher priority areas, replacing about 75% of your ventilation equipment. Your ventilation equipment's 40+ years old on average. Right? Life expectancy of your HVAC equipment is typically about 25 years. So significantly overdue, as you know. But to do about 75%, and remember, in order to do that, we need to bring in new electrical to supply power to bigger ventilation, to bring in more fresh air. Dehumidification units to dry out the moisture in the school for ventilation and indoor air quality. We also have to look at the hot water distribution, piping, and those sorts of things. Any asbestos removal that would need to take place, part of that project. That about 75% of your systems are about $10.5 million, which you do have levy authority. If you did over 5 years, it'd be about $190 annually per $100,000 taxpayer. Okay, next. Just keep clicking because there's just some pictures, but just some of the older ventilation pieces of equipment you have, the shop units, some of the piping and areas where you likely have some asbestos challenges. And, this is a unit that's been, the fresh air area is blocked off. This thing's dripping constantly. It's dripping constantly right now. Your staff's doing everything they can to stop it, but it goes into the ground. And Brad and his staff have been in the building trying to help work here. And if you start cutting that pipe, how far are you going to go? How far are you chiseling into the building? This is just one example, but it's a real life one right here today. Your electrical panels are original in this building. You need to put new electrical service to run this bigger equipment. You also need bigger electrical equipment for elevator or lift areas and those types of things for ADA. So just some of the various challenges on here, ventilation. So I fill those into the boxes, right? Next in the yellow box that has tax impact is lease levy authority. We spent a lot of time talking about this, but this is your ability to add stuff, and you certainly have some educational spaces, as you know, that you'd like to upgrade, science rooms, new tech ed labs, to hear the principals talk about the need for that. And you could add on to this building up to about $3 million in those kinds of spaces. You have authority to do so. It's not in this project. There's no lease levy dollars in this project. And why? In discussions with the building committee was, you're really gonna add on to this, even if you don't pass a referendum. You have capacity here. It's not like you're jammed. The new high school is about the same square footage as this building, right? It's not additional space you need, it's better educational spaces that you need. Plus, this would be a 15-year lease. 15-year lease, well, if the referendum fails, and you pass Plan B, and you have a 15-year debt out there, someday maybe you're gonna pass a referendum, 5-10 years from now, and you don't wanna have a lease on a space that you're tearing down someday. So that's why there's no dollars associated with the plan on lease levy authority. Not that can't be changed by the
Can you use lease levy authority for remodeling?
What's that?
No.
No, you can't. No.
That's new additions, even though we want to remodel, we can't use
You
this.
can't use this for remodel. You can use general fund dollars for remodel, right? But your hands are tied, really, right? The statutes are what they are, right? And your LTFM, you can replace like for like things, right? You can change your cabinetry out under LTFM, but you can't remodel a whole space, right?
Additions we can, but this we can't do a secured entrance with. I mean,
No, you're correct. That's right. You cannot do a secured entrance with this because it's not educational space. So you've seen a lot of school districts, screaming at the legislature, we want safe and secure entrances. You saw they gave some grant dollars out to districts. I don't know, Vaughn, you remember how many districts asked how many they funded, but.
It wasn't a big enough dollar amount to.
It
No,
wasn't
no.
enough money to go around.
It was a very small
We got
amount of
zero.
school districts. You got zero, and I think you also kinda got, well, I don't know, what did you hear, MD, that they say?
Well, when we talked with them at MSBA, we met with the individual working with the review and comment process, and he said he also was a part of that grant piece for safety and security. And he said we basically, when it comes to safety and security, we have the worst building in the state. And so then my thought would be, well, then why didn't you give us the grant money?
Right.
And his comment was, well, you're so far behind, this wouldn't be enough to make a difference. And so we did put in a grant for both the elementary as well as the high school, and it was up to $500,000 that we could put in for. And we addressed everything in those that we felt that we could, and we still exceeded the $500,000. It didn't meet all of the needs by any means, but at least it would have been a start for us.
Yeah.
And during buildings and grounds, one of the things we had talked about was potentially doing a little bit of a lease levy to add on to, like, to the shop area or something. That was something we had tossed around about $500,000 or something.
Right.
But ultimately just said, yeah, just dollars and cents. Again, we have space, we need to do some, and we couldn't use it for remodeling, and that's where we really needed it, to be able to get access for people with canes, people in chairs, you know. And that's, yeah, why we couldn't, but we had certainly looked at that. So I just wanted to put that all.
That's a great point,
Yeah.
and I have a hidden slide in there if we
Yeah.
want to talk more about that
Sure.
project, but just for the full board, so you understand. One of the things that came out of the ADA professionals that were here is that if you're a student, if you're a student.
School is horrible. All I'm gonna say. There's no part of it that's good hardly.
And if a student in your school district says, I want to take shop, an auto shop, they can't physically get there, and you by law need to require that, and the only way to do that was this $550,000 lease levy option we saw, where you could expand the shop and create some sort of lift of some sort to allow that student or any student to do that, right? So you may be forced someday to have to do that, you just need to be aware of that, and you could use lease levy authority for that. Building committee took it off for now, full board, you can always put it back, but again, it's over 15 years, right? Do you really want to borrow that out over 15 years? You know, if you demo this building down, you still have to make those payments to a spot that's not even here anymore, right? So, just so you understand why that got taken off. Okay, next.
Jeff,
Yes.
just some comments on
Yeah,
that,
Jeff.
just to clarify. The security grant, the state set it up as a random drawing, so it wasn't based at all on who was the worst, because they weren't gonna explain to every district that didn't get it why they weren't the worst. So it was completely random by building, and so districts that have more buildings than others had more chances towards their grant. Secondly, when we talk about the lease levy being able to address the ADA at the shop, the way we were looking at that was we had to expand the educational space enough that we could get a lift into it along with the educational space to justify it. We couldn't just put a lift area in and say that's educational space, so you had to expand the room, and that's why it cost so much. It wasn't $500,000 just to get a lift out, it was to provide meaningful addition to the educational space to do it.
Thanks for that clarification. Okay, so again, $0 in the lease levy authority. Next was LTFM, long-term facilities maintenance dollars, and to Ethan brought up the point of, well, we use this money anyways. This is money you get allocated on an annual basis. And what the team looked at is the biggest priority needs that you have, and you have a lot in this building, right? The first would be your roofing. You have a couple areas of roofing that need to get completed that are past their life expectancy. But most of your roofing you've stayed up on in this building. But there's two sections that are particularly coming due. There's some bricks that are really in a bad spot up on the 35 building, on the top part of it, that would need to be addressed. There's, where do you start, where do you stop, right? There's tuck pointing, there's windows, there's doors, there's interiors, there's some flooring areas. You have lead-based piping, as you're aware, right? Where there's lead in some of the piping that, you know, you've had to take some drinking fountains out, chipping and staff, flush lines as needed. We've got half of the piping, galvanized piping, changed out under your LTFM. Not all of it, half of it, right? And what we're trying to do is prioritize the biggest needs. At the same time, we have to address some of the ADA needs. We do not have one ADA bathroom in this facility, right?
I don't get to the bathroom, so I come to conferences, I come to new student orientation, I bring my kids.
We don't have one in the locker rooms. We don't have an ADA accessible spot there. These are things that will be required by law. We start getting in this building. And you should be trying to get done, yeah, irrespectful, right? And, you know, the ADA folks came through, so you heard the presentations about all various things. And there's various priorities. Now, we don't have it all in here. But also, Vaughn shared with you guys about how the state, when they do their code review, can require you to do all of them, right? So they could require you to full every doorknob that needs to be changed out and those types of things. So, just so you understand the importance of that. But I can't stress enough that this 2.7 million does not address all of the needs here. And I think it's important for the community to understand the needs are significantly more than that. And, you know,
Jeff?
yes, sir.
I was gonna say one thing, like, for the roofs, these are the last sections that we have. I think it was, what, 2008, I think, or so, 2010, when we had started, and we've been working, and some of that is every year, trying to do sections of roof to get up there. These are the last ones that have kind of came around. But at the same time, now 2028 is gonna be coming back around, because there were 20-year roofs put on. They're coming back around. We already have to start planning for those, just like the roofs at the new elementary school and the old elementary, you know. So, and just like so much of this, it is just wear and tear. You got floor coverings, that's fine, you know, you can keep them for 20 years, 25 years, whatever. Eventually they wear out. There's nothing to do with that, it just runs through the same way.
Correct.
Yeah.
And so then also, what's fiscally irresponsible is spending
Yeah.
more of this LTFM money that we get for something like this instead of keeping it for routine maintenance because it's coming.
Yeah. Nope, exactly, and
What people have to understand is this is borrowing against our own money.
Right.
So
Yeah, right.
as we
Exactly
borrow
what it is.
against this, then we're not going to be able to
Do
do
the
the repairs
routine-
and things are gonna
The
go
other thing
out
that
of
come up.
repair.
yeah.
That's a great
So it
point.
may address these immediate, but it isn't going to keep, the ongoing repairs aren't gonna be able to get done.
Yeah, if you're staying in this building, and the building committee decided when the roofing's about 900,000, and that's for 15-year life expectancy roofs, not
Yeah.
20 to 30, not to 20 to 30, because you don't think you're gonna be here 20 to 30 years, but we gotta get roofs taken care of. You're gonna have to spend money on roofs if you're staying here, right? But that's a big chunk of this money. That's the majority of that
Well,
money.
if you look at what our annual income is, you're spending about 5 years worth of the next dollars. So
Yeah.
you don't have anything for 5 years, or you get half of it for 10 years, depending on you.
Yeah, go to my next slide, it addresses that, so. So yeah, how does it impact our whole thing? Well, one thing that you have done as a board is you've saved up LTFM for the rainy day fund, or for the roofing if it comes due. So you do have about $1 million put away for that, right? And you can't use it for education, right? It has to be used for the LTFM stuff. So, you know, folks that say, well, you could use it for secure entry. You can't, and you know that, right? But the general public might not understand that. But you have restrictions on what you can and can't use that money for. But you've got it set aside. And then if you used half your LTFM, roughly just over 300,000 a year for the next 5 years, you put that together, you'd be about 2.7 million that you'd have, you know, to utilize. And why would you bring it together and put it in the front? Well, because if you put it together with your other work, if you're doing ventilation and there's certain things that maybe we change the flooring in this room, the time to change is when you got the place torn up, right? You bundle those together for efficiencies on bidding and those types of things.
And again, so just to be clear, that yep, we get 600,000 a year, but once we do this, we're already spending half of that because we're taking it in advance, which
Right.
then leaves us only 300,000
And that's
a year.
That's stuff that's kind of been done all along.
Yeah.
You could save some up, and you can save this year and do a big roof project next year. That's been happening for a dozen years that I've been on the board.
And that's what's been done here, $1 million saved for a $900,000 roof. That was the plan.
Yeah, you got it said. But you're right.
It's ongoing, and it's part of our
Yeah,
day-to-day.
this is taking your rainy day
Your
fund
plan.
away. Your rainy day fund's going away, and you got 300,000 for Chip and his staff to take care of the rest of the needs here, and the Trailview site, right? See, this isn't ideal, right? This isn't ideal.
My point is, there's nothing new about it. All we're
That's right.
talking about is ramping it up and spending in advance at the detriment of our future.
That's correct.
That's what we're talking about.
And you could hold up and just not put this in this plan, right? And just do the tax impact stuff and keep this and deal with it as you go. You could do that too, right? So, next. This is just some of the stuff and some of the needs you got, the ADA needs and the roofing areas and sections and bricks and stuff. Next. So I got 2.7 in there, and to your point, it could just be a pay as you go. Right? Next is your general fund.
So, why don't you back up?
Back up?
Yeah, we'll just back up a second. That LTFM, and the pieces in the green, that has no tax effect, impact.
That's correct.
So whether that's 2.7 or 2.1 or 1.5, it has no tax impact on that. So I just wanted to point that out.
Yeah, no, thank you for doing that. And same thing as we get into general fund, because you're already getting this money. You get the certain amount of money per students that you get. And you have a lot of flexibility in what you can use it for, right? So one of the bigger challenges you have here is your secure entry or lack thereof of a, and so, when Vaughn and his staff said, well, we do secure entries all around the state, right? How do you have the lowest cost to try to make this better for you? You got your superintendents just keep the general fund expenses down, right? This isn't grand by any means, but if you add it on to either where the entrance over here, or the district, or the high school offices, or over here, the district office, and instead of just having a push button doorbell where somebody from the office lets you in and you're free to roam wherever you want, you may or may not check in at the office, this at least forces them after the school, you get students here in the morning and now you're kind of locking the school down. Now, as you come in, you either go, you can't get in that main door, you have to go up the stairs or a lift to get into the office. And then the office will let you into the school and you can physically have to report to the office. Now this isn't, to really do this right, there's way more, you'd have a real entrance for your school where all the kids would come through and right past that office that's supervised by your principals and so forth. You could spend plenty of general fund dollars on this. This was trying to take the lowest cost option we could come up with that would make it better. It's not a secure entry, it's a I call it a controlled entry. You really get at least better control of who might be coming into your buildings, okay?
That's either or, not both.
Either or, you wouldn't do both of these, no. Either you'd be routing everybody through the district office or through the high school office. And you might flip-flop and have the offices flip-flop even or something, staff, or I don't know. That'd be part of your design process to figure out how you can deal with this. And again, it's general fund money, so you make it as grand as you want. It's just taking the money away from kids, right?
And we should point out it's general fund money because none of the other buckets can fund this.
That's right.
Yeah.
None of that's right. That's why it's in this section, right? And it might make more sense if, we're doing the abatement bonds and our new student parking is over here. That might be the best spot, right? Convenient to your student parking, right?
And handicap parking.
Right.
I mean, that's where I envision.
And you'd have handicap parking. You'd have real handicap parking by the door, right? The main door, at least, when you kind of have a main door versus your ADA door is back by the dumpsters now. So, all right. No tax impact for that, right? You total them up, you're 15.95 million, right? These are flexible completely, right? These are additional dollars coming into the district, right? And your total tax impact over 5 years is $232, right? Which really matches close to what your referendum is for the school, right? Now, go to the next slide. And the building committee wrestled with, do you move this up and bond it over 3 years? Do you go back one. Look like there's a difference here, and it's a tax impact of a 3-year debt. So if if you elevated your payments on the levy impact items into a 3-year debt instead of a 5-year debt, what would the tax impact be on a $100,000 home? It's significantly higher, about 1.6 times higher than that. So that's one of the things that the committee wrestled with. Next slide gets into all the, superintendent says we'd like to have options for the board to take a look at so they can kind of, wrestle through this a little bit. Try my best to make this simple for you. The 5-year option we just talked about is right here. It's a total of $15.9 million. There's your tax impact on a $100,000 home. You replace about 75% of your ventilation systems, right? The second one I presented, the 3-year option where you accelerate the payments, $378 annually. It's the same dollar amount, whether it's 5 years, 4 years, or 3 years. You just accelerate the payments and the tax impact. Or you could do a 4-year or a 3-year bond and try to keep the tax impact the same as the referendum, roughly. People are weighing the option of, are we staying in this thing, or are we looking at something new? And the tax impact will be the same. But if you go 4 years or 3 years, you're going to be doing less ventilation on your first phase of phase 1 of Plan B. And then you just, if you did a 4-year plan, you'd be looking at doing 45% of your ventilation in the second phase 4 years from now, so to speak, right? If you did a 4-year, for example. Okay. And what if you compromise some of them in between? You could do something like a 3-year. Anyway, just try to put some of those options in front of you for your discussion before my next step slide. So, go ahead.
Just want to be clear on one of the ones back, the 2.7 million for long-term facilities maintenance that we're talking about. That's not like every year we get that. That's it now for 5 years. We've used up what we had our rainy day fund, half of everything we get for the next 5 years, which then only leaves our, roughly $300,000 per year for everything else. And some of this I knew, I just wanted to put it out there and to verify.
Yes.
And then also, we've only gotten $600,000 a year now about the past 3 years. Before that, it was 200, 320, less than 3.
It was a lot less than that.
And so that's what that change that's been made. So some of it is, I think, most of us on the committee were there, and I think you guys know, but yeah, it's not like we get 2.7 every year, so it's like, okay, I just spent that, or there's no tax in the
That's a
bank.
great
Say,
point.
no, if that was the case, sure, we could have done stuff a long time ago, but that's it, and now it's tied up for 5 years, it's gone.
And it's doing what we don't wanna do, is then neglecting other things.
Yeah.
If we spend that money 5 years in advance, that means we don't.
You only get to spend it once.
Yes.
Right.
We grappled with the timing, as the Buildings and Grounds Committee with the 3, 4, 5 year.
Yeah.
Because we are so far behind in this building. We started there before this board, or the boards before us started the referendums 12, 13 years ago, and they were 5, 6, 7, 8 years behind in doing things then. So we grappled with, do we shorten this up to try to catch up? But the tax impact is so large that it's almost, it's sickening to do that. So to do 4 or 5 years versus 3 years reduces that impact, still allows us to make some progress on much needed areas. It's like a drop in the bucket.
Yeah.
It's just a little piece of what is actually needed for this building.
But again, as we had talked there too, say the reason to go for 3 years is we've already put it up. We
right.
we can't punish the future kids, the future staff, the ones coming through of saying we're already here, and everybody keeps voting no and saying, well, all right, this is what we have. There's pain no matter which way you go. There's a cost, to it. Nobody's purposely ignored anything. It's just there's one hell of a cost to go. So if you shorten it up, that means in 3 years now we can go. If it's a higher thing, we can get completed in a whole lot, worth it. And I know, and I understand.
I know, that's what I said, we're grappling with it.
Yeah.
as I've looked at this, that, you know, to me, the LTFM deferred maintenance money it's money that's already happening, already being spent. It isn't, it's neither here nor there in the big picture to me. It doesn't have to be included in this plan per se, because we can do this at any time, and we're free to do that. General fund money, I'm really not excited about trading that money for a staircase, you know, a teacher for a staircase or several teachers. That doesn't, I struggle with that. The health and safety money, air handlers, I think that's important. I think that's money that we have to spend if we're gonna expect that we're gonna have kids and staff in this building for 5 years.
Foreseeable future.
Yeah, I mean, even if you were to come around, if you failed and you decide in future boards, whomever this is, if people have talked about getting rid of this board, you vote me off the board, you don't fix the problem. I mean, that should be clear. It's just somebody else is gonna inherit the problem at that point, and that's fine. I'm good with all that. But even if you were to turn around and come back in a year or 2 or 6 months and run another referendum, you're still years away that you have people in this building every day. And when we're not providing healthy air, that's significant. That's a problem. And it's something that we have to do. It's also the biggest tax impact on this page. And I look at, you know, in this number, $190 on a $100,000 home. I don't really like the idea of accelerating that. You know, when we put that money into air handlers, they should last. But then I look at the whole picture of this, and the whole picture's ugly, because you're talking about $16 million, and you haven't done one thing for educational spaces.
Right.
Not $1. You're gonna throw $16 million, and what do you get?
An old building?
An old building with some fresh air.
Fresh air.
And that's where I struggle with this whole thing. I'm at a place where I think that we have to spend money. I've been absolutely opposed to spending any unnecessary dollars. I've avoided the whole discussion of it. I know that passing a bond referendum is the best idea, but we're kind of running out of time, and we need to spend some dollars, and I'm okay with doing that, even at the detriment to the taxpayers, because we're there. We've got to do something.
I think the question for me is not the air quality. I mean, that goes without saying. Regardless, even if this passes, you almost want to do that because we're still going to be in the building. I wouldn't do that, right? But we're going to be in the building for a couple of years yet. But to see that recent air quality report was appalling. I mean, we have no choice but to do that. So when I look at that, that's a given. That we have to do. Now, parking. Is that, you know, the health and safety piece of it, it makes me cringe having a road out in front of the school, but that's the other tax impact on this. And do we cut that out to try to save some money on it, or is it time to get it done? Or I mean, I think that's the conversation.
No, and I know where I was at before. And just even the other day after a meeting, I think Ethan and I were just walking out here and just stopped and just kind of, we're always looking at stuff, and whether it's aerial photos or whatever, but
Scott's got all kinds of crazy.
I did, and I stopped and went, what about, you know, because again, this, we have, you know, folks on that, and it did, it made me stop and think, and just in something in a conversation that we had, said, whoa, wait a minute, God, I don't want to rush into this, because, yep, we saw one problem of saying we're going to move traffic over here, but we lose all of our phy ed space, which we just talked tonight about the importance of it, and we all know that too. Well, I think, what was it, $1 million or $1.2 million, we could throw a turf on the field, sure. Okay, like, no, that isn't a great idea. So I'm kind of agreeing with you, saying, well, that is certainly a potential thing. Are there maybe some short-term things we can do out there, or try to look at restructuring another way? We know that, you know, the city is most likely not going to let us shut down the street.
Well, I think that's not an option.
No.
That's not an option anymore.
So,
And I think that we need to have some kind of a budgetary or formulated direction.
Yeah.
I very much appreciate the high-level bubbles and the stuff. I haven't seen anything there that I really like. And I think you can exchange some problems for some other problems when you do that.
But if we're gonna, depending what we do today, as far as going forward, it might not hurt to have it
Have a
included as
placeholder there for it.
as a concept,
Yeah.
but maybe needs more work.
Yeah. Yeah.
Maybe there's, I mean, we've talked about everything to crossing guards. Do we put crossing guards out on the street, and does that solve the problem 3 times a day? Well, 2.4 million pays for a lot of crossing guards.
Yeah.
I don't know that that's the solution either. I know getting rid of the street would be best, but it's,
You can't pay
we're not in
crossing
control
guards
of all
with
that
this money.
stuff. I can't pay crossing guards with that?
No.
No. That's right, you're always limited to where you can use it.
But at least if we say, for instance, if you don't spend $350 on a little bump out, 5-foot, 10-foot area or something, you know, for at least while we debate something or try to figure out a better solution, you know, can some of that $350 be better spent for, I don't know, the staffing, you know, cost would be, but I know it's be significantly less than $350, you know.
If this referendum doesn't pass, we have to spend $350,000 to get people into the building, is my thought. I don't know how else not to. I mean, there's, yeah.
I think, I'm agreeing with you, Bobby, only I don't think 350 would be enough, because it only gets us this, you know, that,
It isn't.
and that's what all of us
It
would say.
doesn't make anything secure.
No.
I'm just trying to get people in the building.
Rockboro Valley, yesterday and today, shut down tomorrow because of threats found in the school. That's just a
It
small
makes no
little thing.
sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
So the parking issue is out there,
Well,
will need to.
I do think it's a good placeholder, so.
Yeah, that's how I see it. I'm not in favor of pulling it,
No.
because I think it's too important,
Yep.
Yeah.
security wise and handicap.
I'm not ready to commit to a bubble drawing and saying we're spending 2.4 million on that either.
No.
We won't ask you to do that. You need a lot of design to figure that out, and if it's the right plan.
Yeah.
You can't build a bridge with pavement bonds either, and that was
Yeah.
another question. We build a, yeah.
That's the next one.
Good question.
Yeah.
One thing I think that's important maybe for you and the community is, and maybe Greg can explain, what qualifies for state debt equalization out of this funding list, right?
Yes.
And what doesn't? And why is a referendum qualify for more state equalization? Just so people understand that, right?
Yeah, so, we've talked about the debt aid on the building bonds being a factor for the district in bringing the tax impact down for your voters. And basically none of these financing options qualify for debt equalization aid. Only voter-approved school building bonds do. And there's an egg.
How about egg to?
Yeah, it's just gonna go
egg
there with
credit.
egg credit. So, as you know, there's an agricultural credit, and basically anything that's bonded qualifies for the ag credit. But lease levies and lease purchase agreements are not technically GO bonds, so they don't count for the ag credit. So that's not in this plan right now. Down the road, if you have to go that route to add on instructional space, it'll come at a higher cost to the taxpayer because there won't be an ag credit applied to it. There's other factors related to wraparound abatement bonds. Lease levies have to be level debt service. We've crafted a plan with a voter-approved bond that minimizes the upfront tax impact and does a little bit of a wraparound while trying to maximize the amount of aid you qualify for. It's not really an option with the lease levy and the abatement bonds and with the short, trying to be mindful of how long you want that debt outstanding. It's not really an option. Just in general, the dollars of tax impact per dollar of investment is higher with these kind of projects for a variety of reasons.
Jeff, do you have more slides?
Yeah, I think this is just,
Is that
this
the
is
end?
for you guys to decide, and the next slides are
right,
next
done.
steps that you'd have, so I'll sit down. Thank you.
The building committee that has drilled down and just ad nauseam gone through a all of the needs of potential options. We've got some variables specifically with, in addition to the amount of project dollar amount, what would the terms be? What seems like the right thing to do?
I'm gonna make a motion just to create a discussion.
Okay.
I make a motion to, for Plan B, to include abatement bonds at 2.4 million for parking lots, and the health and safety LTFM money at 10.5 million over 5 years to cover 75% of the ventilation systems. And I'll stop there.
Again, I want to get her on the table so we can talk. I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion by Bob Woods, second by Scott, to propose renovation project, and that would total 12.9 million.
I should amend that to if the referendum fails.
If the referendum fails, yes.
That we move forward with Plan B. Because there's a sentiment out there to move forward with the Plan B, even if it doesn't, because we're going to be in this building.
But this is if the referendum fails. Thank you. And with a term of 5 years, which then, going back to, just for a point of reference, the estimated amount per year on a $100,000 home would be, is it estimated, approximately $232, right?
Middle one on that sheet, up on that slide is.
Middle green?
The 5-year one with the green in the middle.
Oh, the number, yeah, the 59 is not perched up, but the one in the, yeah, okay.
Their motion doesn't include today.
What's that?
Putting forward deferred maintenance money and general fund money, that's stuff that we can do.
Yeah.
And I think that's the sentiment I'm hearing, and I think it's time for discussion on it, is that the general fund money and that LTFM money is things that we can have discussions about as this progresses.
Right.
So it doesn't necessarily need to be.
Would you consider putting in a lift? We're not talking a secure entrance, and I realize that. We need it. We need a secure entrance. We can't afford it. It's a terrible thing to say.
I know, and I agree with you 100%.
But we're gonna have to do something with getting students and people with disabilities into our building.
It's our budget. We had kudos to our finance to Tammy. Our budget is so tight that the idea of $350,000, who do we pull it from? I know you agree, but it's that sickening feeling of that means people to me. That $350,000 means a friend, a neighbor,
education.
Well, then I'll throw this up in that same 350 or some portion of it. Throw a lift, over there, and we put one back here so we can get kids into the shop classes. Pick your poison, which it doesn't say or
I'm not opposed to further exploring that, Bob. I'm really not. I look at it as that whether you do it or you don't do it, it really doesn't have any impact on the taxpayer.
Yeah, that's true.
And so
we can do it at a later time.
We can do it at a sooner time.
Yeah,
start the exact report.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know that it needs to be a part of this official plan going forward because it doesn't impact the taxpayers. That's a deferred decision that we've always had and always will have.
Right. And I'm with you. I'm actually going the other way of saying, is 350 enough, or if we're going to stick a chunk in there? Do you
see that same drawing being this whole area?
Yeah. No, exactly. And as we know, every dollar we spend is all of our tax dollars. But again, we're all taxpayers, everything else. But it's the general fund of saying, okay, which 4, 5, 6 teachers don't we want to have next year because we're going to have that.
Just makes it personnel.
Yeah.
Well, especially when we could have everything we need if we were able to just start with our building for the same amount of.
Tax impact.
Always has better estimate.
One of our experts had his hands up here.
Well, this is not
If I
open
remember
forum,
correctly,
but
when you spend those funds, ADA requires you to spend a percentage of those funds towards ADA. So out of that 10 million you are setting aside, part of that has to go towards ADA.
It may,
Is that
our
in
understanding is
repairs
it may
or
up to
right?
20% in addition to that. If I remember the ADA presentation that the person gave.
Well, and I think Vaughn, you spoke to that. I mean,
Yeah.
with this, it's a gamble, because they may
we could be opening a can of worms the
Yeah,
minute we.
and I should say, maybe that's a
have
question, I
our-
think all three of us were there when the ADA person was there, and maybe I'll ask Vaughn, and say, I remember the 20, oh, maybe, okay, I remember the 20% number, but I can't remember, was it subtracted from the 10.5, or potentially whatever project you do, 20% on top of that has to go towards ADA compliance.
And if the 10.5 is your top dollar,
Yeah.
then you have to go backwards to go up.
You can look at it either way. You can say we're spending $10 million on HVAC improvements, and then you add the
Yeah.
ADA improvements on top there. You can say we have $10 million budget, and then you reduce the scope of what you
Yeah.
use for that.
Yeah, and see, and that's where I'm not clear, so that might be.
The scope of the project will need to be increased by up to 20% of the project cost to address path of travel issues serving the altered areas.
Okay.
That was the number.
Okay.
I wasn't at the meeting, but I read the.
Yeah, I remember the 20%. And thank you, Vaughn, for that, yeah. And now again, having not put through one of these for a review and comment or even whatever technical submissions they'd have, I don't know if at that time we could make a change to that. I'm saying, so we could still do 10.5, getting it in towards the air handling and all of that. And so I'll just use round numbers, and, okay, instead of 10.5, it's 12.5. If they would allow us to say, okay, you're doing this 10.5, but ADA means you have to add this on, if they'd allow us to at that time.
I don't think they're gonna pay for ADA, though.
I don't know.
They're gonna-
I'm kinda looking back.
You're talking health and safety money?
Right.
Yeah, no, you can't use health and safety for ADA.
Right.
You can only use it for your ventilation type related items, right? But you can use LTFM, your regular LTFM stuff for ADA.
Which we may get forced into doing.
Yeah, but we have
At
some.
the expense of something else,
Yeah,
then
and that
that would be.
2.7, we did have some.
It's accessible, it's available.
But it's available under that.
What about can of worms when you start getting into the replacement even of air handlers? You find problems, you discover things when you remodel that you didn't see, you can't
Yeah.
see inside walls. Is there flexibility in the health and safety dollars?
Yes, there is.
So that number might change.
So
from
it's
10.5 to.
Yeah, so if your scope was, we thought was 10.5, or it came in.
Or the dollar could go up.
Yeah. If it came in more than 10.5.
Choose, we'd have a choice.
You have levy authority to bridge that difference if it came in more. Yeah.
Great question. Thank you.
What the variable would be then in what the actual scope of the project would end up being.
Raise the 232 though?
It would.
That would raise the 232.
It would.
Yeah, if you had more dollars, yeah.
But that's the unknowns, that's the parts
That's
of
the
this that
problem.
is not concrete, whereas if you're building new, you have concrete costs.
When you talk, you really couldn't change the project from 75 to 55 because you'd already be into a bid situation.
Oh, yeah.
You couldn't pull.
Yeah.
You can't change, you
you're
can't
right.
change that
So we
scope.
just
The only
got-
choice would be to add.
Yeah.
So we might be lying at 232.
Right.
Or you start over.
Unintentionally.
Start over? Well, you're
It's
already
over
in
budget, then you reduce the scope and rebid it again, which.
Yeah, we'd have to rebid.
in the middle of the
Well, I'm
project.
thinking in the middle of the project.
Yeah, that's the.
That's.
And there's our
That's the
can of
middle.
worms,
Right.
Yeah.
who knows?
If, let's say the first section, there's 3 sections of the project, the first one goes great, it's the second, third, when you're in the middle of it, now, how do you reopen and rebid? Yeah. And again, I respect, the thing there too, but, yeah.
Craig, just for clarification, with this Plan B, how much of that, from an ag standpoint, would any of that fall under?
Egg to school?
Egg to school?
Yeah, actually, all the components would.
Okay.
So the LTFM bond, even what comes out of your existing funds, would qualify the portion that was allocated or that was levied for debt service for
but not for regular, not for a homeowner, just the ag to school.
Just the ag to school.
Yeah, so not for the homeowner, but yeah, not for regular debt equalization,
I was
but
confused
ag to
on that,
school,
but-
yeah. Good question, yeah.
Any more discussion or?
I'd just like to clarify the motion. 2.4 on abatement bonds.
As a placeholder.
Placeholder. 10.5 indoor air quality.
I should ask that, is that?
Yes.
Is that how you, I heard you say it, but I don't know if I heard it backwards.
The motion was the 2.4 in abatement bonds, 10.5 million in health and safety. That was it.
5 years.
Over
If-
over
and
5
if-
years.
And this is if the referendum.
Right.
So it's this plan right up here you have minus your LTFM and general fund right now. Your, isn't part of the
We're just not
formal
doing
plan.
it as a-
Because you have authorization already on those.
It already exists.
Right?
Right.
Does that summarize it for you?
I do have a hard time with the 5 years, and then 3 years, just because if we end up going down that one, just to be able to complete stuff in a much more timely manner. I do know I said that impact is, we're right there too, but it's a balancing, act to say, is there a, what's the right number, Yeah, I don't know if there is one or not,
I
but.
think it's important to recognize that in all the referendums we've run, how many have been quite close to? 3? I'm thinking of those people who see the economic, sense or logic in not going down this path and having to put all this money into an old building.
I just,
And it's hard.
I appreciate what you're saying, Scott, as far as the time, getting the money repaid back so that you could turn around and do another project, but you're ramping up that cost to 63%. I just can't, I can't do that to my friends and my family and my neighbors.
No. And I know, and that's just it, none of it's taken like that, I appreciate that, and I understand it too, and it's
the tough
We're kicking the
spot.
can down the road.
Yeah, we got it.
Okay.
Uh-huh.
Right past the end of the road.
Because I think I remember you saying that once or twice. So
I've also
kicking
said,
the
if you're
can.
gonna do a bad plan, let's do the best bad plan we can.
Oh, yes?
Right?
This is a bad plan.
This is a bad plan.
But it doesn't, I mean, other than a parking lot, you never know that,
Anything was done.
No idea.
12 million plus is being spent. You'd never see it. You wouldn't walk into a classroom and notice it. You wouldn't.
But ethically, we need to do it.
We
We have to defer
Yeah.
health and
Right.
well-being.
Well, and that's what I was gonna say, is the balance. Is the balance between the taxpayer and then the people that are, and the kids that are in this building every day.
And so as we know, like teachers, we're, hopefully we'd be able to balance out the 62-degree classroom and the 84-degree classroom, that we could get them so we can control it. Because we know right now, it's not controllable, yeah. I mean, with, how much, was it 3 thermostats in the office or 4? I forget, I was gonna say, you walk in there and it's like, well, this converts to this, converts to this, converts to this, and you just can't do it. Versus, Kurt and Chip can sit here at the high school and look at what's going on at the elementary school and just change it on the computer, on their phone. It's right there. And that's the technology, the differences we're talking about. So we know, I said, we wouldn't see anything, but yet we still have to make the dollar. I agree with you. There wouldn't be we wouldn't be able to see anything, but yet it is the right thing to do to get that change.
I've already for 10 years not done these things, and
Yeah.
you can't keep doing that.
No.
Are we ready to move?
I was just gonna say, we have to remember some of these things weren't available to us. These are relatively new tools for us to be able to utilize, so.
Or at least a dollar amounts.
That's
Right.
right.
I mean, we could have before at 200,000, but then we would
Right.
bring 4
That's
or
only
5.
like 215 when we first came on.
Yeah.
If I remember right, it was $215. Now it's $600 and some dollars, so life has changed.
Yeah.
Which is helpful.
Right.
Well, costs have went up. it's not like they have doubled in that time as, you know. And it also should be said, as we know, that our long-term facilities maintenance dollars, the reason we get 600, if we build new, that number's going down, so we have to be prepared for that. If we spend the 2.7 now on this thing, well, we don't have it to use to set aside, or the 900,000 of it, you know, to get ready for roofs. Because even though we just built a building and redid some things, roofs are coming too, and we need to set those aside. Otherwise, you know, people gripe, oh, you haven't done this and you've repaired, you know, with what? We need to get only X number of dollars a year in. So.
Make sure you remember, like, this is the first 5 years, it's not done after that either,
No,
right?
no.
You're gonna be, 5 years from now, you're back with a big chunk again, because you do have other needs that have to be addressed.
Which is why it really stinks.
That's why it's so heavy.
Then try to do all of this in the summer months, not disrupting the school year.
Yeah.
It's a tough one, you know.
For a roll call vote, everybody's ready to vote? So we have the motion, does anybody want the motion repeated? Good? Bob? Sorry.
You're first.
Are we not ready?
I really want to vote no, but I don't know that we have an option, so. I guess aye. Or yes.
I thought you were continuing.
I
No, oh, yes.
I will vote yes.
Yes.
I vote yes.
It's okay to vote no.
Again,
We don't all have to.
this is, because like I said, it's the best worst plan, I understand it.
No, I'm saying it's a,
But with the other one, I say, like I said, if it comes back around and to come into that, I say, nay. Yeah, I just, nope. Like I said it before that, yeah. So,
Okay,
yeah.
so the motion passes.
where'd you vote?
Nay.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I know where you ended.
Yeah, nay. Again, no.
Motion passes with 5 voting in favor, 1 opposed. Yeah, motion carries. Thank you, Jeff, and Bob, and Greg, and
Everybody.
everybody.
Yeah, so thank you all.
Building committee, appreciate all of your
A lot of work.
and,
Thank you, guys.
we're moving on. We're still hopeful that it will be the right thing in the end. All right. Break? Next item is consider approval of, oh, excuse me. We have a few more motions here. Okay, so we've adopted Plan B, phase 1 of Plan B, as the motion read. I'd like a motion authorizing administration to prepare submission of Minnesota Department of Education documentation as required, pending the referendum failure.
And that's something we recently found out that we thought
Yeah.
we could do both at
Yeah.
the same time with the state of Minnesota.
Right,
And then
pending.
we, like in the last few days, we found out that
Yeah.
you can't do that, you can only have one plan at a time.
Yeah, otherwise it takes the latest one they receive, so. Yeah, just for clarification, make sure if everybody on the board had heard that, so. Again, go with a nay on that, if you want it to go into effect, like I said, the day after, saying there is no more waiting, then I will make that motion that
Okay.
we have all of our ducks in a row, all of our documents ready to go to submit to them.
Second? Bob Woods, motion by Scott, second by Bob Woods. Any further discussion?
And this is preparation, but not submission at this point.
Right.
Correct, yes.
All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously. Next, authorize administration to negotiate professional service agreements for either Plan B or the referendum project, so. will be one or the other, but a motion to authorize
So moved.
negotiation.
Second.
Okay?
Do we have to do this at this time, or can we?
Yeah, that was, I wanted to get it on the table, so thank you guys for that. The discussion was probably, I got the same question Bonnie does. Do we have to do that at this time? Do we have to,
Well, if we're gonna be on a timeline for this, I think
Yeah.
it's very necessary, because that's gonna come up very, very quickly.
Yeah, yeah. But is,
Based on the motion that was just made, May 12th is a vote.
yeah,
On May 13th, we're going to know the answer. And based on what I've been hearing is you want to move forward with one or the other. And so we can't wait until then. We need to have them. There's a lot of documents to be prepared. There's a lot of things to be prepared for submission, either way. And then there's to move right into design and various functions that come after that. So I would recommend that you would do it, you would authorize me to negotiate it prior to, and I would think that we would need, if you want to get started now on those documents, I'm going to need some authorization to sign some contracts and negotiate some terms for the future. Or we can wait till after, and then we can go through the process, which you're going to lose a significant amount of time.
Okay, further discussion? We have a motion.
what's the significant amount of
How
time?
do you negotiate on two different plans?
Yeah.
That was my difficulty. I mean, how do you negotiate pricing on two different plans?
You work online, it's no different than you bidding a whole building. You want a price on A and you want a price
Okay.
on B. You get to pick.
We just don't know which one it will be,
Right.
which one will be enforced at some point, one or the other.
Okay. Just didn't know.
Good question.
It's a little more complicated than.
I thought so.
Let's make it too easy.
I thought so, but I was gonna go with you, so
Yeah.
I wasn't gonna criticize you.
Any further discussion? Scott?
No, I'm good.
All right.
I just said those, we get the same question.
All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously. That's it for motions, I believe.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then now that we have a solid decision and you've made a motion to take an action, we will carry out the communication piece. And then on May 12th, the vote will decide which way to go.
Thank you. All right. Next item then is to consider approval of corrections to Education Minnesota Mora teachers agreement, and you have a copy of the agreement in front of you. So, Craig, can you speak to that, please?
During the type-up of the contract, there was a piece that was missed in the typing. It was in all of the notes. It was approved by both groups. I didn't catch it. I was actually caught by Jackie Stevens, caught it. And so we went back to the notes, found all of the documentation, and so that's been handled.
I reviewed that too. and it was-
Yeah.
And I read the one in front of you where they made the changes.
Yep. Okay, so, motion to approve that, please.
So moved.
So
Motion by Ethan, second by Bob Jensen. Any further discussion? All in favor of that motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously. Okay, board reports, administrative update. Board members, any meetings or anything you'd like to?
Been any meetings on this one?
Been here a lot.
Ditto.
I visited the Regional Development Commission on Monday and went over their audit, with that. That was always fun. And yes, they have a reserve fund just like we do. They're at 4.5 months of their annual budget is what they have in reserve. So it's actually even more than what ours is by far. The one other thing that they had brought up, or that we had brought up and discussed, was as us as representatives for various municipalities and counties and townships, the school board, everything else was a coronavirus, making sure that it was brought up and that we had a plan, or at least begun looking not just for this, but just overall of what are we gonna do if something comes up. And now we've had some experience with flu shutting down schools and different things, and it's one of those tough things. You don't blow things out of the water, but at the same time, if you end up quarantining or having to shut things down, just make sure that you're aware of it and try to have something in place.
And I looked into the audience and the nurses in the back row, and she was nodding her head yes. So
Yes.
so you're very much looking at that.
And I did say,
Just as a point of clarification, I did get an update yesterday, was it from Ann, who is working with the Department of Health, and it won't be something we'll be devising here locally. It will be something that will be coming as a recommendation from the Department of Health on how we would move forward. We may tweak it and Moraize it a little bit, but we won't be varying much.
Yeah, we'll see. My niece got home on Friday she'd been teaching in China for 6 weeks. She was home at Christmas, flew back, but she never even got to China. She had been stopped in Thailand for 6 weeks. And they basically just ended up calling and canceling her contract, saying, we have no idea when you're going back. So we were very happy she got home, but no threat of any spread or anything. So, yeah, that's one of those things, they happen, and it's close enough to home that, you know, nobody's that far apart from different things, and so.
Okay, thanks, Scott.
Yep.
Any of the board members care to report on any meetings outside of the ones we are well aware of? Okay. Good morning, Abby. Student board member report. Abby, you're up.
All right. Hi, Abby. So recently in student council, we've been up to a few things. The first one was we had a listening session with at one of our meetings with the MSBA to discuss qualities that students want to see in our new superintendent, things that we think are the most important qualities that they must have, and then we ranked those qualities which we thought were most important. We also had a student council meeting to discuss the concerns with student vaping. That was actually yesterday. We brainstormed a bunch of ideas of how we are going to help our fellow students that already have addictions to this. Helps like stop the amount of students that think they need to start vaping because of the dangers that it involves, and we're trying to spread that. We're thinking of new ways that we can help our fellow classmates. Yeah, we just brainstormed a bunch of stuff with Baki. Our last fundraiser we had was our Valentine's Day one. We go through a company called Matchematics, and you do a little survey online, and then you pay like $2 to see who you match with in your grade. So you can get like your top 10 boys you match with, and then girls you match with that you can be friends with, or whatever, kind of fun. And then and then the next thing we have coming up is we have our next blood drive, which is March 20th, and we're going to start setting up donors next week already. And we'll be in touch with the blood drive coordinators and getting everything set up for that. Yeah, that's it.
Thanks, Abby. Appreciate it. And thanks for participating in the your input as a student body for the superintendent search. Sure. Activities, community ed. Chris, even here? Hi. I did tell you who's in the back row right now. I'm sorry.
Nope, I just wanted to update you on just a couple items. Our state ski individuals, Johanna Schwinghammer, she finished 40th, and Cooper Lennox finished 7th. So we had a good showing there. We hosted the Section 7A individual wrestling tournament this last weekend. It was a packed house here. It went very, very well. We are sending Connor Gamal and Dom Adams to the state tournament, which will start tomorrow for our individuals and carry on to Saturday. So we wish them the best of luck. Giving you a quick update on the Wellness Center. We had a traveling boy-girl basketball tournament there a couple weekends ago with Coach Austin and Grachek. Last year, we had 40 teams, and this year we brought in 75. So that was over a 2-day period. That place was packed. You could hardly find a spot to park. So super turnout there. Coach Ballmer also had a tennis tournament there. He doubled his numbers. We have about 50 this year. And then Chip and I have been given a couple tours of the Wellness Center. Stego was a big one. We've got even a couple to now. We had their mayor come. A couple city council members came as well. That was just this past week. So people are looking at the Wellness Center.
I had a friend in Boston who emailed me because he had saw the photo on another friend of ours from, I don't even know where he didn't say what town it was, but he emailed me to say, oh my God, what a place. You got that in Mora? And he was so impressed, with the size, the scope, just being able to handle it. They said, do you realize how nice that is? What an asset. I said, yes, we do. But it was amazing. Literally halfway across the country, somebody, that's the reach that this had, just because somebody else had posted, was able to see that. And he's like, I want to see if my school up here, can get this.
And it's awesome because we had 6 courts going at one time. If you looked out in the Wellness Center, you could fit a whole lot more people in there. The Wellness Center did not look busy like I thought it was going to. It holds people really well. They were up on the walking track. They could walk, they could watch. So we had a lot of compliments. So thank you.
Great. Thanks for reporting on that, Chris. Jeff, transportation, buildings and grounds.
We are in our playoff season 2 with the transportation department. We have our DOT inspections are coming next week, so Corey is really getting the vehicles in shape for that. We also talked last month about our camera systems in our buses. Unfortunately, the system that we have is not being serviced anymore, so we're looking at competitive bids to replace those, and we're going to add to our special ed buses as well as our Rum River and HHM vans. So we're going to try to push that forward. Buildings and grounds, we are experiencing another steam coil leak in Mr. Norby's room. We have a steam bundle that's leaking, just popped up a couple weeks ago. We did get to replace an exterior door down by the art room that was warped and not working. And we're looking into at the elementary school. We have a lot of communication problems with this teacher's cell phones for one, but our walkie-talkies are handheld. So when Mr. Quall is asking for a custodian for a cleanup, it doesn't always go through. And so we are working with Mr. Baki and the county on trying to get better equipment for that. And the elementary office got to experience a little high school life because they lost heat for about a week. And so there was a broken shaft and a bearing in a supply blower that went bad, so we got that replaced. So they're back being warm. So, and along with those tours, I've been getting calls as well from tennis coach from Litchfield as they're looking at the Wellness Center because he's been up here for tournaments, and so the word's out that people are trying to replicate that beautiful building. So it's a good thing. So if you have any questions, let me know.
Thank you. Principals updates. We'll begin with Mr. Nelson.
Tuesday, we had a little over 60 juniors take the ACT over at Grace. Other than that, just Mr. Baki and I are working with the local GPS to try to develop a workforce for East Central Minnesota. We know that we're producing welders. We know we're producing nursing assistants now. Childcare is the next big thing. There's about 300 people in the county that can't find daycare. So we're kind of working with our fax department to address that in the future. And then one thing exciting is yesterday was our first day of the EMR class. Those are 12 juniors that walked over to Wellia for emergency medical responder course. Next year they hope to take the EMT course, and then we'll be providing that workforce. So that's all I have.
Fantastic collaboration.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you, Brett. Elementary. Randy?
I just wanted to give a shout out to our knowledge bowl and Mr. Thomas, who placed first, second, and eighth at their first meet, first, second, and fourth at their second meet, and I said he didn't get paid unless he got first, second, and third. And he came back with the first, second, and third at our home meeting. So he did a great job.
And the compensation, I forget what that is.
He did a
Pat
great-
on the back.
He did a great job in his first year, and thank you for volunteering for that. School of Excellence. We had a wonderful celebration. We also have from our MESPA conference meet, we have just a couple of brochures to pass around. John Hagenmiller came up from MESPA and gave us the award that day. And like I said, it was a wonderful day for our students and their staff. And, just another way to showcase the wellness center that we talked about.
And thank you. When we were up there and we looked out at our sea of blue, some of you came, thank you for your support. And the kids were just so excited. And that day was just a total celebration waste of a day with Valentine's and School of Excellence. And it was great.
Couldn't plan it better. Perfect day.
That's why we were like, oh, and then we had the cake at lunch. So it was a lot of fun. We are doing a IXL pilot. It's an online resource. We've been using Study Island, if you're familiar with that, for several years. For a long time. IXL is similar but different in that it's very standards based. So a teacher can go in there and pick a specific standard and a specific subject, and it takes them right to an activity and things that kids can do, or they can do it whole group on the Clever Touches. So we're piloting that for a couple months, and then we're going to have them choose between which one, because they're both very expensive. So we'll choose between them, but we're going through that process right now.
I just wanted to say thank you again to Steve Eklund for being a keynote, and everyone that attended and spoke, PTO and Sage as well. It was just a great day. It was. And you highlighted the donations already to make that sea of blue. We appreciate those donations.
All right, thank you. Superintendent's update.
The review and comment document was submitted on February 12th prior to the deadline. That will be for the May 12th referendum. The operating budget cycle has begun. This will be the preliminary budget and will be presented to the Finance Committee. I have in mid-March here, but it will be closer to the 20th to the 23rd, something like that. And then we'll have a presentation for the full board at the March 26th meeting, which is next month. I was able to attend the staff development that all superintendents were invited to. That was funded by the NFL and supported by the Minnesota Vikings. If you remember Jody Redmond, the Minnesota State High School League rep, and the video that you've watched each year at the beginning, she's working with Joe Ehrman. Joe Ehrman wrote a book about transformational coaching versus transactional coaching called Inside Out Coaching. And it was adopted by the NFL to improve the quality of player, as well as improve the ethics and the morals of the players in the NFL as well. And so they decided that to do that, they should approach the colleges and work with a different type of coaching model. And then they decided that wasn't the place they should start. They should get into the high schools. And then they decided they should get into the junior high schools. And so 5 years ago, they started out with 2 teams in 2 states. And Minnesota was added this year in the 5th year. They're up to 16 teams in 16 states now. And Jody travels with Joe and presents that program. Chris will be invited down on April 6th to see it. The presentation, there were a number of pilot schools in the state of Minnesota last year. Those activities directors spoke very highly of it. Transactional coaching is more about the wins and losses and the individual, the things that are done for the individual. Transformational is more about the student that is showing growth and what it does for the team and students versus just an individual, either a team, individual player or an individual coach. So I know we have a number of coaches that are doing that already, and it was kind of interesting because they said that the Next people invited would be the athletic directors. And then the person that would be invited after that, since it's with the NFL, would be your head football coach, as well as a coach of influence within both male and female ranks. So when I came back and I talked to Chris and I showed her the book, she said, I've read the book, I think it's great. I showed it to Troy. He said, I think it's great, I've read the book. Here's my missions, here's my personal mission statement. He was able to spit it right out. So they're already on board. They haven't even been invited to see the presentation yet, which will take place down at, I believe it's US Bank Center. So this is stuff that will be coming up for the future, and I thought it was absolutely fantastic. And obviously, if Chris and Troy have both read the book and are on board, I think it's something that we should be moving towards as well. So that'll be exciting for the future to see how that rolls out. It costs nothing for the district. It's provided and funded completely by all the books, all of the training, all of everything that goes with it is funded by the NFL and Minnesota Vikings. So kind of exciting. In negotiations, we have settled with the Para Secretary and Food Service Group, and we have been notified by both the drivers as well as the administrators of their intent to negotiate. And I believe it's Monday, the superintendent's position closes, and then I believe the initial interviews will be set up for the 12th and 13th, and those will be public, open to the public as well. So I have heard, I've kind of stayed out of it completely because it's a little weird as you see the position you've been in for over 10 years posted. But I did get the curiosity last week, so I started looking, and there's a number of superintendents that have been coming up as finalists in various places, and so those positions are starting to fill. And one of the ones I just heard about this morning will create another opening someplace else, and so that domino effect will take place right on through the spring and on into July 1st. So
It's good for we have started.
I think it's a very good thing that we're a little bit earlier in the process in comparison. So
I'd like to add that those interviews, we've agreed that those will take place at the elementary school.
Yeah.
In the media center.
The media centers.
And if I recall, that had to do something with the handicapped
Accessibility.
Factors as well.
All the reasons why we shouldn't do it here.
Yeah.
Thank you. 3:30 for both days. All right. Correspondence. Correspondence that will be coming around. Any other board business at this time? If not, we have come to our second open forum, an opportunity if you'd like to address the board at this time. And have a couple requests here. I will first call on Steve Sigstad.
Hi. I was the electrical foreman on the job for the classroom additions that we did at Trailview. And I would like us to go at least check into, please, another construction management firm. That job did not go very smooth because of the project managers they had on board. We do a lot of schoolwork, the company I work for, and that's what we do. And we don't have the issues that we had on that job. So I would really like you guys to really consider going to somebody else. There's many companies out there that do that work. So I know I've talked to a couple of school board members in the past. So I'd really like to see that happen this time. That's pretty much all I got. Thanks.
Any stump?
Yeah, I'm just curious as how much the dollar amount was or is state aid that came in to be applied to the Fairview project.
The Fairview project. There was no Fairview.
Well, when you moved toward out the Fairview school,
Mora elementary project.
north.
The state aid, the debt service equalization?
Yes.
Was the
It changes every year because it's based on every year. But off the top of my head, I don't know, I don't have those runs or anything in front of me. I'm gonna say, Greg.
Greg, you have an idea? I mean, we had to hit
Do you
a certain.
remember that far back?
Yeah.
I mean, it was.
No.
I mean,
It is
it-
available somewhere.
Can get
It
you, right?
is.
Yeah.
It's not a significant amount because you had to hit a certain dollar amount before the state aid would kick in.
Right.
And that project just
Was
hit.
under, just under the threshold of the greater amount.
Right, so the state aid incorporated in that project wouldn't be as great as it would be now when we could get over that. That's where that state aid kicks in.
And
The
then-
bulk of the aid during that election was connected to question 2, which did
Say
not
that
pass.
again, Greg?
The bulk of the aid in that election was connected with question 2.
Which would have been the high school.
Yeah. But and then separate, there's tier 1 funding, there's tier 2 funding. Tier 1 is, was it 10%, as a for instance, maybe 10%. Tier 2 is when you get much more, like ours has been way back when, it was 58%, then 49%, 46%. Keeps going down because your total amount of debt, as your total amount of debt goes down, so does your state aid, because of the tier, think of levels. Kenny, like that 20 million is the amount of debt, yeah. Debt is related, yeah. So the higher amount of debt you have, the more the state aid will kick in. So each year, technically, it goes down a little bit, so in your first year, you get more, and once you reach a certain amount of dollars debt.
It's actually connected more directly to the mortgage payment.
The mortgage payment, yes, I'm sorry, yeah, the mortgage payment.
So the information will be available at what cost or at how much effort to get it to you, but yeah, that would be something that obviously could be.
All right, thank you.
If I could just add, a point kind of being, the longer we do wait for a new bill or high school referendum, the less state aid we're receiving. We would be receiving for a new high school itself because of that tiered effect.
Anybody else wish to address the board? Seeing none.
Just a couple of comments on Plan B, as far as moving forward with it. I don't know if the plan is to start working next year, but if that is the plan for next summer, you want to keep the ball rolling so you have your bids out before New Year's? Because after January, contractors fill up significantly faster and your qualified bidders will, you may only end up with 1 or 2, which means your price is gonna go up significantly. Just food for thought.
Yeah?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.